Hi students, and welcome to today's live IELTS class. I am Adrian and I'm streaming to you from beautiful Victoria here on the west coast of Canada. I hope everybody has had an awesome week, and I hope your weekend is going to be off to a great start, or is off to a great start depending on which time zone you're in. Students, in this class we are looking at an IELTS Task 1 line graph that's focusing on second language learning. Welcome Jaineel, welcome Saeed, good to have our members joining in on time. Everyone, this is a members chat class. So in order to join the chat, become a member, click the join button next to the subscribe button. But of course, everybody is welcome to watch. This is an academic IELTS Task 1 writing. For the general IELTS, it's quite a bit different, so make sure you pay attention to that. This lesson is presented to you by aehelp.com for academic IELTS. Visit us there. For general IELTS, check us out at gieltshelp.com. We've got tons and tons of materials on both of those websites to help you with your writing, reading, speaking, and listening parts of the exam. The websites look like this. This is our academic IELTS website here. You can click this big red button to join our premium package. We're an IELTS test registration center certified agent, so you're in great hands with us. And join our many students who are successful in the IELTS exam. We help students every single day. For the general IELTS, it's the green background. Click this big red button there to join our premium package. Again, it's a one-time payment for lifetime access. Welcome Carolina, our chat moderator. Hi Udit, hi Rashika, good to see all of you in the class on time. That's fantastic. All right, everyone, to get our app, Academic IELTS Help, General IELTS Help from your app store, and to follow us on Instagram, IELTS_AE Help, GIELTS Help. Join us. It's a great way to maximize your IELTS score and get your needed bands to pursue your dreams. All right, everyone. So questions, just send me an email to adrian@aehelp.com. Right now we have Task 1 Academic for members, and then in about 90 minutes we will have a Speaking Part 2 class that will be the cue card, and everybody will be able to join that class. Okay, everyone, so before we get going here, just some important points. This is a very interesting mistake that so many students make on the IELTS exam. Many students write for pie charts and bar graphs and line graphs all the same. They actually kind of all write like a line graph. So when you're looking at academic task 1 and you're looking at a line graph, it's important to understand that line graphs and bar graphs and pie charts are all slightly different. So they do not show you the exact same interpretation of data. Okay, it's very important to understand that. So when you're looking at line graphs are used to show the correlation, positive or negative, between variables x and y, okay, on these interval scales. So what I mean by that is you have, so again, you have these correlations, okay? And correlation means basically a negative or a positive. So here, for instance, we have this dotted line, fossil fuels. So fossil fuels, here we have, like, let's say liters or something, and then here we have years, is showing a negative correlation because it's going downwards, okay? On the other hand, hydroelectric power is showing a positive correlation because it's going upwards. So that's what line graphs are used for. Now, this is not our line graph for today. I'm just giving you a quick idea of what line graphs are used for. They're showing correlations, and often they're showing these correlations over time. So time is one of the dependent variables. It's called a dependent variable. Okay. And then you can see some vocabulary here that's useful for line graphs. So you can say the dotted line, the solid line, segregated line, double line. And then you have gradual, like gradual increase or gradual decrease, slight, rapid, significant. We'll use this vocabulary as we're writing our task 1 for our question here that I will show you in just a moment. But again, remember that line graphs show continuity. So you're using present perfect, you're using the progressive form, it's change over time. Okay? If you're not exactly sure the reason for a line graph, it's good to read a little bit about the basic idea of using a line graph. Okay? Interval scales are, again, they're these scales X and Y. We call these interval scales because we have equal distances between the measures, like 1 year, 1 year, 1 year. Okay, now that's a lot of information, so you might want to rewatch this part of this video later and listen to what I said about line graphs one more time. But again, line graphs, they show correlations, positive or negative, on y-x variables that are the dependent variables, and they show change often over time. So keep that in mind because that will have a big impact on the language that you're using for line graphs. Okay, and you'll see that when we do this example. And our example is right here. So this is the question that we're looking at today. So here we go, everyone. Let's read this together. Okay. And I do believe this was a past question on the IELTS exam. So let's have a read. It's always step 1. All right. Let's start by reading task 1 of the writing here. So read with me. Okay. All right. You should spend about 20 minutes on this task. The following chart shows the percentage of Canadian students learning several different second languages in high school over a given period. Okay, report the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Write at least 150 words. That's minimum 150 words. And yes, they definitely count the number of words. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to observe this graph here, and it's a little bit small, so I'm going to jump over to our syllabus, and we'll continue from there. Okay. So let me just get in there. There's our syllabus. Again, remember, this is brought to you by aehelp.com and glshelp.com, this lesson. So join us there. And again, if you have questions that come up, just a reminder, you can contact me, Adrian at aehelp.com. Okay. All right. So here's our line graph again. We've got it nice and big for you here, so it's going to be a little bit easier to see and read, hopefully. Okay, so once you've read the question, let me just read this question one more time. It is a good idea to read the question twice, just so you have absolute clarity, or as much clarity as possible. So the following chart shows the percentage of Canadian students learning several different second languages in high school over a period. Report the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Okay, so now I want to look at this graph. I want to look at it carefully, and I want to look at it from left to right, top to down. Okay, that's the way we read. That's the way we should read the graph. All right. So first of all, I have the title here, Canadian High School Students Second Language Learning. Okay, clear. All right. Let me just switch colors here. And then on the y-axis, so this is my y-axis that's going down here, I have the percentage of students learning. So this is the percent of students. And I can see that this is from 5 to 35%. And the intervals, right? So these differences are 5%. Okay. So I've got 5% differences there. All right, and then down below a little bit, you can't see it, but here we go. There we go. On the x-axis, I have, so the x-axis is going this way, okay? I have the years starting with 2006 and then going all the way till 2014. Okay, 2014 is kind of hidden behind my head, but it's there. It's just after 2013. So we've got intervals of 1 year and we've got an 8-year period. Okay, 8-year period. So I'm noticing all of these, okay? Am I done? No, I'm not done yet. I have to keep going towards the right. So left to right, top to down. Remember, you're always doing that, okay? All right, and obviously what I still need to pay attention to here is the languages themselves. So I have French, Spanish, Japanese, Chinese, other languages combined, and then here I have German. Okay, so those are my languages. So now that I have taken a look at the graph and observed the key information about the data, now I am ready to start writing, okay, this line graph. So a line graph, let me see here if I got it in my notes. I should. So a line graph, it has a few important steps to consider, or we could say a few important parts to consider. Okay. First, you have the introduction, the introductory paragraph. The introductory paragraph, it's quick, it's short, it's a couple of sentences. It's paraphrasing the questions with detail. Okay, and then I have another short paragraph. It's the overview. The overview gives an idea of the most obvious features of the data to the reader. And then I have my longest paragraph. That's going to be maybe 6-7 sentences, which will analyze the data points and make some comparisons, and it will interpret the data for our audience. So not just simply numbers, okay? I'm not just saying oh, it's 10%, the other one's 20%, the other one's 25%. That's not very useful. It needs to interpret, like for example, a quarter of all Canadian students in 2008 chose French as a second language, right? So we need to interpret the data. And then we have a summary, okay? So keep this in mind. Introduction, short paragraph, it includes details. And then the overview looks at the most obvious data. So it's not necessarily the most and the least. A lot of students write the highest number or the lowest number. Yeah, that's often interesting and it can be the most obvious, but it's not always, okay? So if you want to get a really high band, like a band 8, band 9, look for the most obvious data and then interpret the data. So in your analysis, interpret that data, translate it into human language, into logical information. And then in the summary, what can we observe? What do we clearly learn from this data that we can see? That's what you want to keep in mind, okay? So let's work on these 4 different parts. And it will make a lot more sense as we get going here. Okay. Now, members, I hope you're listening because it's your chance to shine. So you will be doing this with me. So we're going to get right into the introduction here. Intro, paragraph. So again, we are looking at the details in the graph to help us write a better introduction, okay? So in the introduction, we're paraphrasing the question here. All right, let me go a little bit smaller there. So we're paraphrasing the question here and giving some more detail. It's very important. I've seen still so many students just paraphrasing with no detail, and it's really not getting you a band score higher than a 6 or a 6.5. Let me start, and then we'll see how you do, okay? Yeah, Udit, for a band 8 or a band 9, it is important to include a summary, but the summary is not a conclusion. Okay, I'll show you what I mean by that. The summary is really kind of like the overview, but it's more of a piece of information that we understand once we analyze the graph. Okay, I'll show you what I mean by that, all right, later on. So right now, let's do the intro. So the line graph, okay, notice how it says the following chart here. Okay, I don't say following chart because I don't know if my reader sees it or not. Okay, and let's go chart. Let's keep the same. So the line chart shows, depicts. Okay, shows and depicts have the same meaning. Depicts the ratio. Okay, percentage is a ratio. So if you have a certain percent, you have a certain ratio. The ratio of Canadian students learning, and then here it says several different second languages. Okay, so instead of writing several different second languages, I can just write what they're learning. French, Spanish, Japanese, Chinese, German, and other. Learning French, or learning either French, Spanish, Japanese, Chinese, German, or other second languages. During high school. Okay, so again, I'm just using the data here from the line graph. So French, Spanish, Japanese, Chinese, German, other in high school from 2006 to 2014. Okay. (2006 to 2014). So it's my introduction, and as you can see, I'm already interpreting the information. Okay, so I don't just paraphrase. It's much more valuable to give these details. This is going to help you to get that band 8 or band 9, all right? So again, take a look. The following chart shows the percentage of Canadian students learning several different second languages in high school over a given period. Now look at what I wrote. The line chart depicts the ratio of Canadian students learning either French, Spanish, Japanese, Chinese, German, or other second languages during high school from 2006 to 2014. It's much more detailed, it's much more valuable, okay? If you simply just paraphrase the question without giving any more details, you have to basically write a perfect paraphrase, and then you might get a 6.5. Okay, I hope everybody got that. So I hope you're clear when I say that, all right? So like your teachers might be telling you, oh, just paraphrase the question. Yeah, if you do a perfect paraphrase, you might get a 6.5. Okay, but if you do more, if you give details like this, even if you have 1 or 2 mistakes, you can still get a band 7. Okay, because you're writing more coherently. This is much more coherent. This is original, coherent writing, so it gets higher band scores. Okay, Keep that in mind. Then if you just paraphrase. All right. Okay, so we've got a few nice introductions here from our members as well. This is Jaineel here. Okay. Jaineel's really gone the distance. And Jaineel writes, so Jaineel writes, let me get it a little bit bigger here, Jaineel. Okay, so Jaineel writes, the line graph depicts the percentage of high school, let's do that, Canadian high school. Order of words, Jaineel, Canadian. Country modifies the noun, right? So Canadian high school students learning various foreign languages. You don't need learning various foreign because you have the languages. So learning German, Japanese, French, Spanish, Chinese, not and, because they're not learning all of these. It has to be an or, Jaineel. Okay. Or others between 2006 and 2014. The y-axis shows the rate of learning different types of languages from 0 to 35% with intervals of 5%. Use the number here, Jaineel, not the words, okay? So don't write words unnecessarily, like don't actually write the words 5%. Otherwise, it's good. It's like a band 7.5, 8, okay, without my corrections. So it's not bad, all right? It's still pretty good. It's still pretty accurate. Just be careful of these mistakes. All right, so let's see. All right, we're going off screen here, so I'm going to accept the corrections here, Jaineel, and then we'll bounce back on the screen to the proper visual. All right, okay. Okay, so Sanjay says, the line chart compares the changes of pupils learning second language, French, Spanish, Japanese, Chinese, and other, German, in Canada, ranging from 5 to 30% over a period of 9 years. It's over a period of 8 years, I think, Sanjay, but that's splitting hairs. Careful with your comma use, Sanjay. Okay. Arda writes, the line graph illustrates the ratio of high school students in Canada learning French, Spanish, Japanese, Chinese, German, and other as a second language between the years 2006 to 2014. Saeed says, the provided line graph, you don't need to say provided, Saeed, it's just weird, okay? So just write the line graph. Illustrates the ratio of high school Canadian students. The natural way, everyone, is Canadian high school students. You always go nation and then the rest of your adjectives and noun, okay? So Canadian high school students who are learning various languages, learning from starting from 2006 and ending 8 years later, 2014. Saeed, definitely say it if you're not going to name the languages, like if you don't say French, German, Chinese, Japanese, fine. But at least say 5 specific languages and some others, okay? So at least give us the number of languages the line graph is dealing with, okay? So 5 specific languages and some others. All right. Rashika, the line graph illustrates the proportion of Canadian students learning various languages, French, Spanish, Japanese, Chinese, German, and other in secondary school in 8 consecutive years from 2006 to 2008. Yeah, it's good, Rashika. Students, other should come at the end of that list when you have your specific languages and then other, okay? And you don't need to write consecutive years, Rashika, because it's a line graph. So in line graphs, we tend to know that it's consecutive years. Consecutive years I might use for bar graphs or pie charts where it's not necessarily consecutive years, but line graphs are almost always consecutive years because that's the way line graphs work. So it's just kind of weird to write it, okay? Keep this in mind, students. This is an important point here, okay? So this is just an important tip. Stop tracking. Okay, this is an important tip here. You must not use words unnecessarily, like consecutive or using words like given or provided, as I think, who was that? Was that Saeed? Yeah, provided. This is actually a mistake in writing. So using words, and it's not actually a small mistake. So especially when you get into professional writing and academic writing, it's not a small mistake to use words unnecessarily. So using words without reason, without good reason, is a mistake. Does anybody know what that's called, by the way, before I even tell you? Members, do you know what that mistake is called when you're using unnecessary words in your writing? So good writing always sticks to useful words that have purpose, and when you do that and you write 200 words for task 1, that's how you get a band 9. Okay, so especially for those of you who have good English, this is a very important point, because it's one of the most common mistakes for students that have good English and should be getting a band 8 or a band 9. Yeah, so Arda says it's called wordy. So in everyday language we call it wordy, but in literature there's actually a word for it. It's called wordiness. Okay, so using words without a good reason is a mistake and is called wordiness in literature. And like I say, in professional university level writing, college level writing, it's expected that students have good grammar, good spelling, because especially these days you have grammar check and spell check. Most of us are using computers, so most of the mistakes these days for good writing is made with information, and the most common one is wordiness. Okay, and on IELTS they do look at the mistake of wordiness, especially from band 7 to band 9. So from band 7 to band 9, wordiness becomes a very important assessment for IELTS. Okay, I hope you keep that in mind, right? So now you know it's called wordiness, and you can Google that. So how to avoid wordiness. There's a kind of a fun Google exercise for you. Google how to avoid wordiness in my writing. Ask Google that question, okay? I bet you it will give you some great information on that. Okay, so pay attention to that, okay? Really pay attention to that as you're getting better and better in your writing. Okay, so we have our introduction. Now we want to write our overview, okay? All right, overview. And the overview is the most observable part of our line graph, okay? So here we have our wonderful, lovely line graph again. And now I want to see what is going on. So what can I notice? What are the most obvious kind of trends amongst these languages during these years? What do you notice, members? So if you're looking at the overview, what do you notice? I notice a couple of interesting points. So some of you might notice most and least and so on, but yeah, that's kind of okay. Yeah, everybody can see French is the most popular, sure. But still, there's another point that's kind of, for me, more interesting here. Okay. Yeah, very good. So Saeed says a lot of fluctuations. So you can see that there's a lot of these up and downs. Okay, I agree, Saeed. That's a very good first observation. We can see that there's like an up and a down and an up and a down and up and a down and up and down. And same with these. There's some ups and downs and ups and downs and here as well. Okay, and then here we've got some fluctuations as well. So maybe only Chinese that has a more consistent piece here. So yeah. Okay, and then Jainil makes a good point too. Jainil says that we can kind of see that there's 3 languages. So if we pull a line there, Jainil's saying that we can kind of see that there are 3 languages which seem to have the upper half of this graph. And then we've got another 3 languages that appear to kind of have the lower part, or we have 2 languages and then all the others. Yeah, I agree. I think that is the most interesting here. Okay. I agree. Yeah. And you know, why can't everybody not see my screen there? Okay. I'm drawing on my screen and I'm not sure why you cannot see. Oh, okay. Sorry guys, I've just realized something. I'm surprised nobody's told me about this. Okay, let me do this. There. Like magic. Did anybody tell me about this, or nobody's telling me that you can't see what I'm doing on my screen? Okay. Yeah, I'm like doing all this fancy drawing up until this point, and I just realized in my feedback display that you're not seeing my fancy drawing. Look at all this beautiful drawing that I was doing for you, and you just couldn't see it. Okay, so once again, now you can specifically see what I'm talking about. Okay, so for our overview, yeah, now you can see that basically these 3 languages, French, Spanish, Japanese, are arguably the more popular second languages or choices of second language. And they have fluctuations. And then these 2 other languages, Chinese and German, maybe take a little bit less popularity and also experience fluctuations with the others. Okay. Yeah, so now you see all my highlighting. Okay, everyone, so let's write this. Okay, so let's write this this piece of information for the overview. Okay. All right. So in the overview, at first glance, it is clear, and me personally, I'm not even going to write about French being the most popular because I can do that in my analysis. Okay, at first glance, it is clear that the popularity of second language learning of specific languages fluctuated over the course of the given, and here I can say given 8 years. Furthermore, it is also evident that French, Spanish, and Japanese were the most popular choice of second language learning, while Chinese, German, and other languages were less popular. Okay, so that's it. That's all I'm going to say for my overview here. Okay, so again, one more time. At first glance, it is clear that the popularity of specific languages fluctuated over the course of the given years, of these specific languages, or of these languages. Let's simplify it, of these languages. Furthermore, it is also evident that French, Spanish, and Japanese were the most popular choice of second language learning, while Chinese, German, and other languages were less popular. All right. So that's my overview, okay? Again, nothing too fancy here. You can, in your paper-based exam, kind of do that circling here. So like what I did, I just basically looked at the top half here, looked at the bottom half, and then I just saw that, hey, there's some fluctuations here, right? Okay, so that's all I did. Nothing too fancy. Okay, yes, it's all these colors, but nothing too fancy. All right, so let's see. Arda has an overview here. Let's see what Arda wrote. Okay. Arda writes, at first glance, it is obvious that the fame of these second languages fluctuated during the given 8 years. Very good. Yeah, absolutely. The fame, popularity, I can deal with that. Furthermore, French, Spanish, and Japanese are the most popular choices. It's past tense, so if you're referring to the actual years, Arda, you have to be careful because it should be past tense here. Okay, so it should be were. We don't know what they are now. In fact, it looks like Chinese was really increasing, so we have to be careful. Spanish and Japanese were the most popular choices, plural, you can count them, as a second language, while other three languages, it's not really other three languages, you have to be careful because we have German, Chinese, and other languages, while German, Chinese, and other languages were less popular. So you have to be really careful with your data. That's the other. So wordiness is one of the big mistakes made at the band 7 to 9 level, and the other one is information mistakes. So if you avoid information mistakes, if you avoid wordiness, that's how you move from a band 7 to a band 9. Of course, paying attention to grammar and vocabulary. Okay. All right. Kuwak, you cannot draw in the computer-based version on the chart, unfortunately. So you have to just do it visually in your head, Kuwak. Okay. Bakrat says, immediately it can be seen that there are a few languages that have a similar pattern, namely French, Spanish, and German. I think that's a bit of an awkward comparison, Bakrat, but you could do it. Okay, it's slightly awkward. All right. Udit says, overall, it seems to be very clear. That's awkward writing, Udit. Overall, it is very clear that the interest of Canadian students is mostly inclined towards French, Spanish, or Japanese as second languages. However, there are fluctuations for the less popular languages, comma, Chinese, German, and others, capital C, capital G, Udit. Okay. All right, good. So now we want to analyze. All right, so we want to analyze, and here I would just do a simple analysis, okay? I would not overcomplicate the analysis. When you're looking at a line graph like this and you're like, whoa, that looks really complicated. How do I analyze this? Don't overthink it, right? So here we have the languages, and let me show you what I would do. I would just go from top down, okay? In this case. So go from here down in your languages. Let me get a bit of a bigger, there we go. So go from top down, okay? So number one, I would just talk about French. It's the most popular, it fluctuates, and then ends up there. And then number two, I would talk about Japanese, okay? and I would talk about how it fluctuates and then ends up here. And then number 3, I would talk about Spanish. I would definitely mention this point here where it exceeds the popularity of Japanese in 2009, and then maybe this point here. Okay. And then for German, I would mention just that there for number 4. And then for Chinese, I would go number 5. Okay, which is this. It's an interesting one. And then if I have some time, I would talk about others. But others, I would just mention the range here. Okay. Let me show you what I mean. So let me just start here, and definitely students, do not try to mention all the different fluctuations, okay, or variances. All right. Let me show you. So don't overthink it. Okay. Number 1, let's start with French. Okay. So French, I can see, is roughly about 27%, and its highest point, it's roughly 33%. So it's kind of this range here that it fluctuates in. Okay, all right. So let's keep it simple. Let's keep it simple. All right. Okay, here we go. So the analysis, and again, you don't need to write analysis. This is just for your learning. Okay. All right. So let's just do this. From 2006 to 2014, French, whenever you start a sentence with a time expression, like from a certain date to a certain date, make sure you put a comma after. So from 2006 to 2014, French is consistently the most popular second language, fluctuating between 27 to 33%, with an average around 30%. Okay. All right, and that's all I would do. And then I would immediately move on to Japanese. While Japanese was almost as popular as French in 2006, at around 27%, it eventually became less popular over the next 8 years. And then here it's about 18%, 8 years. And by 2014, only 18% of Canadian high schoolers chose this foreign language. Okay. All right. And that takes care of number 2, which was Japanese. So we've got Japanese out of the way. Now I'm looking at Spanish. Okay. And I can see, Kuok, that you're writing, which is great. All right. I'd like to see writing from other members as well. Don't just listen to me. So write on your own as well. I can see artists coming up now too, which is great. Okay. Conversely, So it's kind of the opposite, right? Because Japanese is becoming less popular. Spanish is becoming more popular. So we want to show comparison here. Conversely, right? It's the opposite. Okay. So conversely, Spanish gained popularity during this term. In 2006, about 1/5 of students learned this as a second language. But by 2009, that's where we have this crossover, right? Where is it? It's right here, yeah. So around 2009, between 2009 and 2010. Okay. So as a second language, but between 2009 and 2010, Spanish exceeded Japanese in popularity, and by 2014, nearly a quarter of Canadians chose it as a second language. Okay, so that's Spanish out of the way. So I've got the three big ones. I've got French, Spanish, Japanese, which is great. Okay. And we can see that German shows kind of the same trend as Japanese, while Chinese shows somewhat of a similarity to Spanish in the sense that it increased in popularity. Okay. All right. Now, yeah, Spanish, I mean, at one point it was 25%, and then it slowly decreased in popularity. So 2011, so I might fix that here in my information. There. Okay, a little bit more accurate. All right. Okay, so let's take a look at those last three languages. All right. Now, if I'm running out of time in the IELTS, which I'm kind of am during the class, then I have to be really clever in how I write about these last three. And I probably already have like a good close to 150 words. Let me see how many words I have here. I can do an interesting word count here with a selective highlight. So I'm going to do a word count and just kind of see where I'm at with my number of words. Okay. All right. There we go. Yeah, so far I have 176 words until this point. So I'm already at word count, right? And I haven't really even touched Chinese, German, and other languages, and I haven't even touched the summary. So I have to be careful, especially if I'm running out of time. So here, when I'm looking at this and I'm like, okay, well, if I write about Chinese, German, and others separately, I'm really going to run out of time. I don't want to take time away from my task 2, but I do want to have a complete essay, so I can't just ignore these 3 data points. Okay, so I'm going to combine the information with these 3. Okay, all right. So I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but I will explain the most important points. Okay, So Chinese, German, and other languages fluctuated between 2 and 15%. Okay. All right, so I'm happy to just do this, okay? So I'm happy to just write this for the German, Chinese, and other languages. The popularity of German, Chinese, and other languages ranged between 2 and 15%. During this period, again, I'm leading with the time expression, so I need a comma there. German became less popular while Chinese rapidly increased in popularity. And yeah, okay, I didn't go into specific percentages and changes, but it is enough to kind of summarize those. All right? Okay. Now, if I have like 2 minutes left or 1 minute left in my 20-minute time, I might write a summary, okay? And again, it's a very important reminder. A summary is not a conclusion. Okay, you're not giving an opinion. You will lose marks if you start to give an opinion on the details or the data, okay? So you cannot give an opinion. This is just a summary, okay? This is just a summary, all right? So something that we can learn from the graph. So when we're looking at these data points, we should be able to learn something interesting. What we basically learn is that while French remains the most popular second language, other languages among Canadian students change in popularity, and that's all I would summarize. Okay, so in summary, this line graph implies that while French remains the most popular second language study among Canadian secondary school students, other languages change in popularity over time. Okay, that's all I would summarize. That's the basic information that I can take away from this line graph. Okay, so now if I do a word count, let me see. Let's grab that and let's grab that. I've got a couple of extra words in there, but that's okay. I'm not going to split hair or split hairs. And then I got that. Okay. So yeah, even with that, see, even though I wrapped it up pretty quick, I'm at 232 words, okay? So I'm at about, I don't know, maybe 70% over the minimum. If you can achieve that in the 20 minutes, that's great. So your aim is somewhere around 200, 210 words if you're going for that band 8, band 9, okay? And you can see why, because you need about that many words to have a complete, clear essay, okay? I just can't even imagine trying to, you'd have to be extremely concise to do this essay in 150 words. Maybe it's possible, but very difficult for sure. Okay, students, that's it. That's how this essay reads. The line chart depicts the ratio of Canadian students learning either French, Spanish, Japanese, Chinese, German, or other second languages during high school from 2006 to 2014. At first glance, it is clear that the popularity of these languages fluctuated over the course of the given 8 years. Furthermore, it is also evident that French, Spanish, and Japanese were the most popular choice of second language learning, while Chinese, German, and other languages were less popular. From 2006 to 2014, French is consistently the most popular second language, fluctuating between 27 to 33%, with an average around 30%. While Japanese was almost as popular as French in 2006 at around 27%, it eventually became less popular over the next 8 years, and by 2014, only 18% of Canadian high schoolers chose this foreign language. Conversely, Spanish gained popularity during this term. In 2006, about a fifth of students learned this as a second language, but between 2009 and 2010, Spanish exceeded Japanese in popularity, and by 2011, a quarter of students chose it as a second language. The popularity of German, Chinese, and other languages ranged between 2 and 15%. During this period, German became less popular, while Chinese rapidly increased in popularity. In summary, this line chart implies that while French remains the most popular second language study among secondary students, other languages change in popularity over time. Okay. Yeah, Kuak, you can say ultimately, sure, instead of summary. Yeah, that's a good question. Arda says, yay, I finished mine as well. Good job, Arda. Yeah, I can see your summary there. And that's what you want to do, students. So that's how you roll out a high band essay. Okay. All right, everyone. So again, remember, in order to improve very, very quickly, visit us at aehelp.com for academic IELTS and gieltshelp.com for general IELTS. Get the world's best learning materials and begin your journey for that high band score. Again, it's a one-time payment for lifetime access on these websites, so you really should check it out. This is our General IELTS website here, and all you need to do is click this big red button to join the premium package. For academic IELTS, it's here, and you just need to click that big red button to join us there. Thank you so much, members. I will be back in 30 minutes with IELTS speaking part 2 cue card. Okay, so don't go too far. Stretch your legs, hydrate, drink a bit of water, and then come back and get ready to practice some speaking part 2. We will have volunteering today as well, so it'll be fun, it'll be exciting, and it'll be good learning. So hopefully I will see you all soon. I'm Adrian. I'm signing out momentarily. Bye for now.